Hello, welcome to Kingdom Inspired Kids podcast. I am your host and founder, Calvette Boyd, and today we will continue our episodes, our series on preparing for the summer for our children. So today we are going to talk about how to plan for your child or your teen's graduation party. When you think about parties for any event, any person, whether they're young or old, can be a bit overwhelming. So we want to see if we can take some of that overwhelming nervousness, anxiousness out of that. So today we are going to talk about how we want to prepare for it. Get your notepad and your pen, and let's get started. So planning for a child can be with ADHD or ADD can be joyful and rewarding. It can also be a little bit overwhelming. So what we want to do is make sure that we are creating an environment that is very structured but flexible, and it's engaging but not too overwhelming. So the first thing you want to do after that is you want to understand what they need. What does your child need? Is your child a child that gets overwhelmed or overstimulated when there's too many loud noises, when there's too much loud music, or if there's a lot of flashing lights like those disco lights? Is your child a child that gets overstimulated in environments like that? So you are going to want to think about that as one of the top priorities. What does your child need or what kind of environment does your child need in order to be engaged, have fun, but for it not to be overstimulating and overwhelming? The next thing you want to do is involve the kid. I remember growing up, my parents, it was just like whatever the adults said. But now we do something a little bit different. You want to involve your kids because you want to have something that is fun for them, something that they've created, so that when people are coming over, they own a little bit of it. So it's kind of like taking ownership. It's not them trying to be in charge of anything. It is them just being a part of what we're doing with their birthday. So ask your child, what are their favorite things? If they're little kids, do they like Gracie's Corner? Are they, Power Ranger kids? If they're teens, are they into like crowns and princess and things like that? What is it that they like? Because you want to make sure that whatever theme you go with is something that's not too overwhelming as well. And sometimes as parents, we don't think about those things. So ask your child, what is your theme? What do we want to do for your party? And we want to start preparing and doing this probably about 3 months out. And the reason I say 3 months out is because the more time you have, the more you can plan and be detailed. And that way, if you or your child change your mind, you can go back and you can make sure that you have enough time for those changes. Okay. So we want to make sure that we choose the right environment. Choose the right environment. Where can we take our kids so that it's not too much for them and it's not chaotic? I know when my kids were little, we always went to Chuck E. Cheese. I used to love going to Chuck E. Cheese. But I can tell you, even then, I was an adult, but even then taking them to Chuck E. Cheese, I got a little overwhelmed. So now what I do, after I realized I was getting overwhelmed at Chuck E. Cheese, now what I do is I like more private, intimate parties so that you get a little bit more one-on-one time and you have a lot more fun because it's really, really intimate and it's not too it's not too overpopulated. So where is this party going to take place? You've got to figure out where you're going to have it. Where will this party take place? Will it be at your house? Will it be at a park? Will it be at a small venue? Will it be at a small community center? Where will it be? And then once you figure out where it is going to be, go ahead and start creating your guest list. Now, this is where you got to involve the child. You can't do all of this on your own because you don't know exactly who, other than the people that you see all the time. You don't know exactly who your kids might have a relationship with. We forget about people. Sometimes we just think about the family and friends that we're always around, our church members, or if our kids are in sports, we think about those people. But do we think about people like the bus driver or the teacher that gets your kid out in the car rider line? Do we think about those things? Sometimes we don't. So you want to make sure that when you're creating your guest list, ask your child, who do you want to come to the party? And you guys together, you start making that list. And we're planning like 3 months out. So that gives your child time if they forgot, because sometimes we forget. That gives your child time to write down who we're preparing, like when we're writing now, and then to go back and add and write some more names down. And what you could do is you could ask your child to go ahead and anytime if you think of another person that you want to add to the list, give me that so that I can add them to the list. I can add them to the main list. And sometimes, like for me, I used to always want to get like a whiteboard. You can get a whiteboard, or you can get, just a regular composition notebook or a piece of paper and write it down. And then that way your kid can say, oh, I remember my bus driver. Oh, the mailman, when I get off the bus, and the mailman's always out there. So I'm thinking about the mailman. You want to make sure that if they have people that they really care about, let's make sure we add those people to the list. And then you guys have, since we're 3 months out, you have, 2 or 3 weeks. I would get down to like 8 weeks before. So we're starting 12 weeks before, 8 weeks before we finalize this list. So we've been playing with this list for like a month, and we know that this list is done. And now we're ready to do something, we're ready to go to the next step, because depending on how many people you invite, that is going to determine, how much room you're going to have at your venue or in your yard or wherever your party is going to be. So just make sure that you get that guest list narrowed down about 8 weeks out, so that we can get ready to prepare for the invitations. Now, once we get our guest list done and we're ready to send out those invitations, if your child's old enough to write, addresses and all that information or names on the envelopes, let them take part in that. Because remember, this is their party. And we're adults, yes, we're the parent, but let them take part. It creates ownership for them. Once that's done, you and your child can take those invitations and drop those invitations off. Or put them in the mail. I was always taught that it's better to have an invitation mailed than it is to just hand someone an invitation. So when it comes to those things, nowadays we do hand out some invitations, but I love getting an invitation in the mail. I feel important. So just think about that. People like my mom's generation. So my mother is older. She's in her 80s. So people in that generation, most of them want you to mail them an invitation. So just think about those kind of things. So get your invitations handed out. That way you've got four weeks for them to confirm if they want to attend the party or not. And then you've already got your party information on there, when it is, how long it's going to be, and all that good stuff. Now, one thing I didn't talk about in the beginning was there are children, some children are on medication for their ADHD and ADD. You've got to think about, one of the things to consider is thinking about if they're on an immediate release medication that immediately releases in their system, that stays in their system about 4 hours, anywhere from 3 to 4 hours. Or Is your child on a medication that's extended release that can last up to 8 hours? So you want to think about those things, and that way it'll help you kind of determine what time of day you should have your party. The next thing is when you schedule your party, make sure that your party is not longer than 3 hours. A good 2 3 hours, so that they're on task. You can kind of keep them together versus this all day party and the kids are not able to stay focused and do what they need to do to enjoy themselves. Okay, so circle back. That's what I wanted to talk about when it comes to that piece of it. The other thing is make sure that you select activities that are ADHD friendly activities. Never heard of that before. Craft stations, things like water play, if they're going to be in the water, or scavenger hunts. This is keeping them busy. Science experiments, if there's someone that likes science, like one of my kids loves science, any kind of obstacle course, things like that, so that they're not just sitting down. That kind of gets boring. You want to do something where they're moving around and they're active. And so when they leave this party, they're like, oh my gosh, or I had a great time at the party. So you want to also have a list of activities somewhere written down. We call it an agenda, but you can do that inside your invitation, or you can do that, have like a whiteboard, print it out or post it so that there's a time limit. Let's say if your party starts at noon, then from noon to 1, or from noon to 12 to 12:30, we're doing a scavenger hunt. From 12:30 to 1, we're going to be doing crafts at the craft station. So you want to prepare so that they know exactly what they're doing. That is going to help us keep these kids on task and to help them have fun. Once you do all of that, you want to make sure that you prepare for high energy, because a lot of these kids have high energy. So they're going to want to be playing and they're going to want to dance, and they are going to have a burst of energy. And so you've got to make sure that you're prepared for that. And you want to make sure that you have enough people, enough adults there that can kind of monitor the kids. And then if you have an event planner, that would be great, because the event planner could actually help you to keep the kids on task and to make sure that they're doing the activities at the scheduled time. And then we're wrapping up, about 5 minutes before each activity ends, so that we can go and move on to the next thing. And then you want to think about the snacks and cake that you have. Listen, I'm not a doctor. Again, I am not a doctor, but one of the things I don't believe in is I don't believe in Red 40 for kids. I don't believe in it. I've seen what it has done to my child and some children that I've been around. So I don't believe in Red 40. So the Doritos and the Takis and those kind of things, you're not going to see those at a party that I host, especially not if there's kids there, or even if there's adults there that are ADHD, ADD, because I don't want to deal with the consequences of what happens with that. I personally have seen an attitude change. I know that there are some people that don't believe in that. That is just my own personal opinion. I am not a doctor, but I don't believe in giving kids Red 40. I just don't. You want to make sure that when you get your cake, listen, I love cream cheese. I am not a whip topping kind of girl, but when it comes to kids and how sugar is going to affect them as well as it affects us too, you want to avoid too much sugar and too many dyes in whatever you're hosting. So if you're having chicken salad sandwiches, or you're having turkey or ham sandwiches, or whatever it may be, just make sure that you take into consideration what is on your menu, and then make sure that if there's any kids that, you can put it in your invitation if there's any special dietary needs or anything, that the parents let you know, so that you can make sure that you have something there for everybody. You can offer protein-rich snacks. They kind of help with emotional regulation, like cheese and nuts and yogurts and things like that. And you want to keep that cake kind of towards the end of this party, so that once it's over, they are headed home, you can even do little boxes, individual boxes of cake, slices of cake that they could take with them after the birthday kid or teen cuts their cake. You could cut that cake so that that could kind of be the end of your party. Or if you don't want to do that, you can just hold the cake to the very end of the party. So we want to do cake at the end because we know that that cake is full of sugar, and we don't want to we want to avoid any kind of post sugar crashes early on. So we want to keep that towards the end. And then we want to make sure that we transition to the gifts, to the gift part. So sometimes kids register for gifts. Sometimes they didn't. When I was a kid, we didn't have registries, so we didn't know anything about that. Now, today's generation, you got a registration list. Some kids go on Amazon, they go to Walmart, they go to Target, different places. It's whatever your preference is. I personally, people that know my children ask me, what do they like? Like, I have one kid who loves cosmetology. So anything that has to do with doing hair or nails or feet or any of that stuff, like that's what she loves. And so those are good gifts for her. So you think about those kind of things. Make sure you share that. If you do have preferences, just share that. And if not, just be grateful that they came to your party. They're friends with your child or teen. They came to the party. They brought a gift or a card. Just be grateful, because for me, the party is not about the gift. Okay? The party is not about the gift. The party is about coming together to celebrate life and another year of being on this earth. And for your kids or teens to have a good time with their friends, their family, their neighbors, their loved ones, their teachers, their mentors, and those kind of things. But you can do a couple of different things when it comes to the gifts. If you're afraid that gift opening is going to be overstimulating for your kid, then you could open gifts privately after the party is over, after they've gotten their cake or eaten their cake, and take it with them. You could do that later, or you could do like a 15-minute block at the end of the party where they open gifts and they say thank you. And then we want to make sure that if there are any plans that fail, any of the games that fail, anything that failed, if your child has a breakdown, if they're not playing safe, anything like that, make sure that you add some kind of support and flexibility into the plan. So again, if your party is going to be from 12 to 3 o'clock, then add a little flex time in there for hiccups. We always want to make sure that we do that. I would keep the decorations to a minimum at this party. I would make sure that all my guests know exactly how long the party is going to be and what time we will be wrapping up that party, so that everyone can be out by a certain time. So if that party is over at 3, I would push for about 2:40, 2:45, about 20 minutes before the party. I would make sure that all events ended so that everyone is gone by 3 o'clock. Okay. So listen, I hope this has been helpful. I just know as a parent, it has been sometimes very overwhelming for me. And I know if it's overwhelming for me as a parent and as an adult, I know that sometimes it can be overwhelming and overstimulating for our children. So just make sure that you're planning your activities for the summer. Plan. I'll end with the same way I started. Plan. Make sure that you are prepared for what can happen. Make sure that you're coming up with a plan of everything that you're going to do this summer, because that is going to make it easier for you as well as for your child and for your team. Listen, I am going to talk to you guys soon. I hope you like, follow, and subscribe to all my channels. I am on Facebook. I'm on Twitter or X. I'm also on LinkedIn as well as YouTube. I really want you guys to go to my YouTube page and follow me at Kingdom Inspired Kids. And I really hope that this information is helpful. And I hope you guys have an awesome and amazing, blessed rest of your day. And we'll talk soon.